The sound of laughter echoed through the bright glass walls of the dealership, bouncing off the polished floors and gleaming cars as though the place itself was in on the joke. Three sharply dressed individuals, two young men in tailored suits and a woman in a sleek black dress, stood together, their laughter ringing loud, their pointing fingers cruel. Their target was a frail old man in patched clothes with a sack slung over his shoulder and a weather-beaten hat resting on his head. His shirt was torn in places, sewn together by clumsy patches of fabric that spoke of hard days in the sun and long nights of labor. His shoes were scuffed, his hands roughened by years of tilling soil. He stood silently, his face unreadable, enduring the ridicule that seemed to cut deeper than the sharpest blade. Before we dive deeper, let me pause for a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that true worth lies far beyond appearances, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps spread stories of compassion that the world so desperately needs. The old man's name was Ezekiel Turner, a farmer who had given every ounce of his youth to the land. For decades, Ezekiel worked the fields outside the small town where he lived, his life defined by the rhythm of the seasons. Rain or shine, he was out at dawn, plowing, planting, and harvesting. His clothes often bore the scars of his work, sweat, dirt, and rips from years of kneeling among crops. He didn't have the luxury of silk shirts or polished shoes. His wealth was measured in sacks of grain, and the humble produce he sold at local markets. But Ezekiel had one thing most people overlooked: vision. Beneath his humble exterior lived a man who observed quietly, who listened carefully, and who carried a dream bigger than himself. He noticed how farmers like him were often mistreated when they came to town, judged by their clothes, their accents, and their lack of sophistication. He remembered walking into banks where clerks sneered at him, into stores where assistants ignored him. And now, standing in the dealership where laughter rained down on him like hail, he felt once more the sting of disdain reserved for those society deemed lesser. What the laughing group didn't know was that Ezekiel had been preparing for this very moment for years. He had saved every penny, every coin that farming brought him. He lived frugally, ate simply, and invested wisely in land that others overlooked. While people mocked him for being poor, Ezekiel quietly bought small parcels of farmland, one after another. Seasons came and went, his crops flourished, and while his clothes remained tattered, his bank account grew silently. Still, no one saw it. They only saw the patches, the sack, the weathered hat. They saw the surface and dismissed the men beneath. That day in the dealership, as the laughter echoed, Ezekiel's mind traveled back to the struggles he endured. He remembered losing his wife years earlier to illness when he couldn't afford the best doctors. He remembered sitting by her side, holding her hand as she whispered, "Promise me, Zeke. Promise me you'll rise above this. Don't let them break you." He remembered his children leaving town in search of opportunities, embarrassed at times by their father's shabby appearance, unaware of the empire he was slowly building. He remembered nights when he went to bed hungry, choosing instead to invest in seed, tools, or another acre of land. Every sacrifice was a brick in the foundation of a future he had long envisioned. Now, standing there in the glaring lights of the dealership, mocked for nothing more than his clothing, Ezekiel knew it was time. He didn't raise his voice or fire back with words. He simply stood still, his silence stronger than any argument. When the laughter finally subsided, and the sales manager approached him with thinly veiled disdain, Ezekiel quietly asked to speak with the owner. At first, the request was brushed off. "Sir, these cars may be out of your range," the manager said with a smirk. But Ezekiel persisted, calm and firm, until finally the dealership's director arrived. Dressed in a sharp gray suit, the man extended a professional smile, ready to brush off another customer he assumed couldn't afford much. But as soon as Ezekiel produced the paperwork, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The old farmer wasn't there to buy a car. He was there to buy the dealership itself. The documents confirmed what no one expected. Ezekiel Turner had accumulated enough wealth not only to purchase the dealership, but also to secure its staff, operations, and future expansions. The laughter that once filled the air was replaced with stunned silence. The very people who mocked him now stood frozen, their faces drained of amusement, their pointing fingers lowered in shame. Ezekiel didn't gloat. He didn't mock them back. Instead, he turned to them with quiet dignity and said, "A man's worth is not written on his clothes. It's written in his heart, his work, and how he treats others. The moment was cinematic, unforgettable. Word spread quickly across town about the humble farmer who had bought the dealership. The same people who had laughed at him now spoke his name with respect. Those who once ignored him now greeted him with admiration. But Ezekiel remained the same, simple, kind, and humble. He continued wearing his patched shirts and straw hat, a living reminder that appearances are never the whole story. For Ezekiel, the purchase wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about humiliating those who mocked him. It was about showing the world and perhaps even reminding himself that patience, hard work, and humility have a power far greater than cruelty or arrogance. His story became a source of inspiration for the young and old alike. Farmers in the region felt proud of their roots, realizing that dignity wasn't measured by fabric or fashion, but by character and perseverance. Parents told their children about Ezekiel's journey, teaching them never to judge others by appearances and never to underestimate the power of resilience. And so, the dealership that once laughed at a farmer in tattered clothes now stood as a beacon of transformation, a place where Ezekiel offered equal respect to every customer, whether they wore polished suits or worn-out boots. His employees were trained not just to sell cars, but to serve with kindness, ensuring that no one ever again felt the sting of mockery within those walls. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you right now to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. These stories are more than entertainment. They are reminders of the goodness we can choose each day. Your engagement helps spread hope and inspire others to act with compassion. Before we close, I want to ask something special. Please comment below and tell us, have you ever been judged unfairly for your appearance and how did you rise above it? Your words might give strength to someone who needs it today. Ezekiel Turner's story will always remind us of one powerful truth. The world may mock you, underestimate you, and dismiss you for what it sees on the outside. But your worth is not stitched into your clothes or measured by the laughter of others. It is built day by day in your perseverance, your kindness, and your refusal to let bitterness take root. And sometimes, as Ezekiel proved, the very stones that others throw at you can become the foundation of a legacy that silences mockery forever.